Now, if you want to have beautiful food plots for whitetails this year, you do not need very expensive equipment to do so. And what we're trying to do this year is I want to show you with using moderate amount of equipment how you can make and create beautiful food plots. And really, I'll just start real quick. If you just basic food plotting equipment, and we'll even take it one step further after this, where you can do it even at a more cost effective than using a quality cul-de-packer, ATV cul-de-packer. We're using a Packer Max right here. And then a handheld broadcaster, Earthway. That's an Earthway model, I think 2750 or something like that. I've actually used that in 2006, that red Earthway model. Now this was several of them ago, but to spread over 7,000 pounds of fertilizer, lime, and seed on 18 acres of food plots in 3 states. So there's a lot you can get done with seeding with that. Quality ATV sprayer. This Fimco right here with the little 4-foot boom and 2 nozzles I like the best. And I would say that's about a $300 total equipment purchase. And the ATV, that's a old Yamaha Grizzly 700. I think I paid $3,400 for that, obviously used after shopping around a lot. So, you know, this right here can get you into a lot of quality food plot plantings. And you know, at more of a moderate price. I've used up to a $30,000 tractor, and then tillers and discs and cone-shaped broadcast spreaders. So I've used that equipment. In fact, on my old Kubota, I had over 500 hours on it. So a lot of experience with that, but you don't need that expensive equipment. You don't need expensive drills and all this. And so this is just the basics right here. And I'll talk about what we're doing this year. Of course, we're using the Ultimate No-Till system I developed in the early 2000s. I developed this because I had very poor food plot soil up in the UP of Michigan, sandy soils in the high 4s, low 5s for pH. If you look up poor soil food plots, improving poor soil food plots on Google, you'll find that article. And what it started with was a rotation of rye and buckwheat. Obviously, everyone knows that's a great way to build the soil. Buckwheat in the summertime, rye in the fall through spring, and you're making those rotations. What I quickly found out is that this buckwheat can get 3 or 4 feet tall. And then what do you do with it at the end of the summer if you don't have heavy equipment to work it in? And that's what I kind of ran into before I had the tractor, maybe in 2001, 2000, 2002, somewhere around there. And what I developed, I found that with the stalky buckwheat, and you can see this buckwheat right here, some of it's approaching a foot tall. It's a smother crop. And I found that I could seed into the standing buckwheat. It didn't matter if it was peas, beans. I've never tried corn, but I think you could do the same. But peas, beans, rye, oats, wheat, clover, chicory, and I've even seeded my lawn at a cabin like this before. I found you could do that, seed into it, smash it all down with a cul-de-packer, and if you're left with a little bit of weed growth on the bottom, you can spray it, follow it up with 2 quarts per acre of glyphosate, and you'll have a great crop. We'll show you that this summer. I've also planted simply with just the ATV and the sprayer. I did that for 10 years before I moved down here to Southwest Wisconsin. We'd drive 6.5 hours one way to our lease. We'd spray in May, early May, mid-June, and end of July. At end of July, on the same day, we would spread our brassica seed. It was open soil by then. Even if you look around here where it hasn't been planted in decades, literally since the 50s, we could do that. We could have done that out here in May, spray, and then spray again mid-June, and spray again end of July. Your first spraying is the most important because you're eliminating future weed debris. And just with spraying those 3 times, a lot of people don't, they don't want to use chemicals, but in that case, we could not have had food plots. We didn't have anyone work these plots up. We didn't have anyone plow, disc, or till for us. We simply sprayed early in May, again mid-June, end of July, and we opened up the soil that way, meaning there was nothing on the soil. We could easily put our brassica seed right on the soil at the same time we sprayed the end of July. So that's 3 trips. We were driving 6.5 hours one way to spray for 2 hours on 6 plots and then go back home. Sometimes in the same day, just the ATV and sprayer. And then we spread our brassica seed at the same time as the 3rd spraying. The glyphosate is a post-emergent, so it will not hurt the seed when you put it on the ground. And we had great crops. We started doing that in 2002, so a long time ago. That's that next step. I personally like the cul-de-packer, the ATV sprayer, handheld broadcaster ATV. But if you just wanted to use an ATV and a sprayer, you could have exceptional plots by spraying that way. And again, you're not focusing on summer crops and spring crops in that case, because you have nothing to work those crops into the ground with and work on the crops. And so very hard if you just have an ATV and a sprayer to have good crops if you have a standing forage going into the springtime. You know, like clover or even rye, if you don't spray it in the following spring and you try to put plots in and the grass is 4 feet high, you can't do that with just spraying in a handheld broadcaster. You have too much debris on the ground. And so, but you can do that. So that's the next step down. And the third step down, we had 6 acres of plots up here. We could have done that with a 4-gallon backpack sprayer, which will spray approximately 1/8 of an acre. You need double the chemical, double the water to kill because it's so inefficient spraying. We could have used a handheld backpack sprayer, sprayed 1/8 of it at a time. It was a 4-gallon backpack sprayer. Spray 1/8 of an acre at a time. We could have multiplied that into 6 acres, taken a lot of time, but we could have done it with just a handheld backpack sprayer and then simply broadcasting that brassica on the ground around August 1st in this location, which is the timing for brassica in this location. And then fast forward to Labor Day weekend, we just apply rye right on the ground on the other half of the food plots. And we had that layer of standing rye here. We had brassica over here on this half of the plot. And then around October 1st, when we were coming in here hunting for the first time, or second time, we would put another layer of 100. So we put 150 pounds of rye the first time, 150 pounds second time. And whether you were using just an ATV and a sprayer or a handheld backpack sprayer, you can get the job done. Going back, basic food plotting equipment. The lowest form of food plot equipment, if you want to have good rotations, if you want to plant late planted beans, peas, you want to have a smother crop that you can lay over it. You can't have a smother crop growing in the summertime that you have to till, say with various grasses, forages, sun hemp, different types of clover. You can't have that type of crop because you can't get the seed on the soil then and then be able to offer good seed to soil contact and then lay that over the top. You'd have to add a mower in there, a tiller, a disc, something, a no-till drill. We don't want to do that, or a heavy crimper or something that costs thousands of dollars. You don't want to do that. So with just this amount of equipment, you can have beautiful food plots, and it boils back down to just a cultipacker, a handheld spreader, an ATV sprayer, and an ATV. Buy it used if you can. Don't skimp on the cultipacker. This is a very high quality cultipacker for an ATV. We fill it with water. This cultipacker with sand, you can put sand in it too, equals 600 pounds, which is perfect for smashing this buckwheat when it's 2 to 3 feet tall. We're getting that seed to soil contact first, getting the seed on the ground first. And you too can have great food plots with minimal equipment, even going down to a handheld spreader. And I hope you watch this channel for these tips going throughout the summer and how this food plot progresses. This is something I've been doing since the early 2000s, mixes of these different types of things, because it was all about going for efficiency on my own lands back then. 2006, 18 acres, 3 states, over 30 food plots. Did that all by hand, over 7,000 pounds of seed, fertilizer, and lime by hand. Did that with the ATV and a sprayer and a cultipacker, and that was it. That's been going back for a long time. I've been doing those planting methods, completing these planting methods. It can work for you. You don't have to spend a whole lot of money. There's a lot of ways that you can plant food plots without getting a tractor. I have sold my tractor eventually because it was more efficient to plant this way. And you can imagine coming down here for 10 years and planting 6.5 acres of plots when we didn't have a tractor, a tiller, a disc. We really had to be very efficient going back to 2002 and how we planted, and we wanted to have beautiful crops. If you look at a lot of my old articles on my food plot section in my website, you can look and see a lot of these. If you look up no-till plantings for deer, different things on Google, you can find a lot of beautiful looking Wisconsin food plots that we had in the 2000s, and they are all based on that no-till. We didn't even use a cultipacker disc, anything at that time. We just couldn't bring it all down here. You can get it done. You can get your food plots done. Minimal equipment, the basic food plot equipment. We'll show it to you this summer. I can't wait for you to see it, but you don't need a lot of money when it comes to food plotting, and you don't need to sacrifice quality with having to buy a lot of equipment at the expense of shortening your pocketbook. You can get it done this season right now, and we'll show you how to do that.